Hi there, Steve Coughlin here again. I want to follow up on my last video, and I want to talk about words and word families. In my last video, I said we can learn 100 words a day, depending on circumstances. If it's a very different language, it might only be 20 words a day. That as we get into the language, we pick up more and more words incidentally, because we don't necessarily need to look them up. And on a system like LingQ, if we don't look a word up, it's assumed that we know the word. Again, if we come across the word again and we don't know it now in a new context, we can look it up again and the statistics adjust. And I encourage people not to try and learn 1 or 2 words a day and very deliberately try and learn them, but rather that the strategy should be to do as much listening and reading as possible so that you start getting that snowballing effect of accumulating more and more words incidentally, naturally. Now, obviously, this assumes that you are either reading material which has word lists, which is what I used to do when I learned Chinese and other languages, or you're reading, at least in the early stages, a lot on a computer where you have access to online dictionaries, such as is the case at LingQ. You can't just start reading. I mean, you have to have access to a dictionary, and quick access to a dictionary, because as we all know, no sooner do you look something up in a dictionary than you forget it. And so you have to very quickly get some meaning, continue reading, do some listening, forget it, go back in there, and so forth. So now there were a number of comments saying, yeah, you can learn 100 words a day if you're only talking about words, but really we should be talking about word families. And I get this argument quite frequently. And I don't agree. First of all, let me say that some languages will have, more words by nature of the fact that they are, inflected, that there's conjugations and declensions and so forth. So whereas in English we go, I go, you go, he goes. We go, you go, they go. In French, je vais, tu vas, il va, nous allons, vous allez, ils vont. There's 6 forms. So I'm the same in Slavic languages with their nouns and their adjectives. So the numbers will be larger, but that doesn't matter because I'm not comparing my known words between languages. I'm just treating the known words number as milestones in my pursuit of this language. And I've said before that pursuing your known words total, say at LingQ, is kind of like the racing greyhounds pursuing the mechanical rabbit. It's something that inspires you to go forward. And if you acquire more words, eventually you're going to be able to use them. Now, one other problem with words, there's a number of things with word families. Why I prefer to count every different form of a word as a different word. Okay, the easiest sort of example of where you shouldn't get credit for car and cars. Okay, it's the same word. You see car, you see cars. However, it's not obvious in every language how plurals are formed. And so it might be worthwhile, even in English, to save oxen as the plural form of ox. You still need to learn that it's oxen. That's point number 1. This occurs in a number of different languages. The different cases in different languages, like Slavic languages, they're governed very often by prepositions or by certain verbs. And therefore, it's useful to save and to learn the different forms of, say, a noun, and save that together with the preposition or the verb that governs it. And so I find myself saving a lot of different forms and learning, therefore, a lot of different forms of adjectives and nouns individually and as part of phrases. So I do need to deliberately, or at least pay attention to, the different forms. So to that extent, the statistics that count the number of individual words that I have learned is a meaningful statistic. Furthermore, how do we define word family? So in English, just thinking of words like, I mentioned the last time the word act. So act. Acted. Okay, that's pretty easy. That's the past tense. Maybe you shouldn't get credit for that. You might pass that over and you're padding your known word number. But action maybe is something that you need to save more deliberately if you see it. Activity, reaction, nation, all right? Nations, okay, that's obvious. Nationality, it's not so obvious. Is that part of the same word family or not? International, so international. In, say, Slavic language, международный, or forms of that, between nations, is how you say international. That's not immediately obvious. So when I see that, either I deduce it from the context, in which case I get credit for it, or I might save it. I mean, the same is true in Chinese, where all of their, not all, but the majority of their words are compounds of 2 and sometimes 3 characters. So you can, at times, deduce the meaning, although sometimes you can fool yourself. So I would tend to look it up just to make sure. And so you very quickly accumulate in Chinese vocabulary based on, you go, gai bian is to change, gai jin is to improve, xiu gai is to revise, gai shan is to improve. So you start to see these words that contain a character that you're very familiar with, another character that you're familiar with, you haven't seen them in combination, you see it, you assume you know what it is, or you look it up, but very quickly you can count that as known because it's so familiar that you tend to remember it. So the point I'm making is that, in counting the words, okay, I'm not trying to say, if I, like my statistics at LingQ tell me got 90,000 words in Russian, 60,000 words in Czech, 40,000 words in Korean. This is not something I can brag about, but these are milestones. And if I can drive that known word total in Korean up to 60,000, I think I'll be able to understand, news and so forth much better than I do now. It's been my experience. The higher my known words total, the better I understand. The better I understand, eventually, the better I speak. And of course, I have to, at some point, start speaking a lot if I want to be able to speak well. But if I don't have a base in vocabulary, if I don't have a good level of vocabulary and comprehension skills, I won't be able to develop speaking skills. Some people say, well, there's no one knows that many words and stuff like that. Look up in Wikipedia the size of dictionaries around the world. And most of them are well over 100,000 words, up to 500,000 words. I mean, there are a lot of words in these different languages, and there are constantly new words being added. So the assumption again that, well, if I have 5,000 words, I cover 90% of any content. This is another common fallacy. The idea that a small number of words accounts for 90%, 80% of any context. That may be so. However, it has been my experience that the words you really need, the key words for any given context, are amongst those infrequent words. And those infrequent words are hard to learn for the simple reason that they're infrequent, and yet they are quite key. I have only to look at my experience at LingQ. If I know 20,000, 30,000 words, and I bring in an article or an ebook into LingQ, I still have a lot of unknown words. The percentage may be low, but there's a lot of them, and they are quite key to understanding the context. So, to summarize, people can count words however they want. They can count word families if they can come up with a clear sort of definition of what constitutes a word family. Maybe such a thing exists. I don't know. I see no harm in counting every single sort of different occurrence of the word as a separate word. Maybe it pads your statistics a little bit. That might encourage you. It doesn't detract from your learning in any way. And in many cases, learning, let's say, the instrumental case of the word, друзьями in Russian is different. You need to learn that because it's not obvious. And so every form of the word, to my mind, is worth learning. That's why we count them the way we do. And so that's just to respond to some of the points that were raised in response to my last video. So thanks for listening. Bye for now.